Hi, I'm Danielle Dietrich, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I am going to talk about the new disadvantaged business enterprise regulations that went active in May and how they affect the control requirements for DBE certification. So, DBE, or disadvantaged business enterprise certification. When I use DBE, I do also mean airport concession DBE, also known as ACDBE as well. But I'll just use DBE for both of them. The program, went through some changes recently, and the sections have been revised, include the sections dealing with control. So one of the important things for DBEs is to prove ownership and control. That's what certification kind of comes down to, is proving that the woman or minority or minorities own and control, run the company. So today we're going to talk about the control aspect of that. And so the women or minority individuals that are used for certification are referred to in the regulations as socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, and they are calling them by the acronym SEDO, S-E-D-O, and pronounced SEDO, at least in the US DOT. Things that I have seen. So today we're going to highlight some of the key changes in the section, what they mean for your business. So as I said, the general rule is that one or more CEDOs must control the firm and own the firm in all aspects. And so they have to look at all the pertinent facts of making this decision, viewed together with context. That means the certifier needs to look at the whole picture of the business, not just isolated factors, to see if you have the power and authority to run it. And so having this language is helpful because in the past, we have seen certifying agencies just get really bogged down or one or two little nitpicky details and use that as a basis to decertify a company. And, that's not good because they're, missing the forest for the trees, if you will. So the CEDO must be the ultimate decision maker, in fact, regardless of operational policy, delegation arrangements. So the buck stops with the CEDO, must have the final say in all matters affecting the business, even if some of that is delegated, or there's guidelines set in place for others to follow. The CEDO must hold the highest officer position in the company, such as the CEO or president. So the governance provisions of your business, so the governance documents, whether that is your bylaws, your operating agreement, what have you, may not require non-CEDOs to concur or consent for you to transact business on behalf of the firm. So you must not need anyone else's approval, whether they be a shareholder, board member, or other person, to make decisions for your business. The only exception is under bylaws or an operating agreement for extraordinary actions such as selling the business, dissolving the partnership, those sorts of things. There are some limited exceptions that require you to have the non-CEDOs agree. But another thing to be aware of is your financing agreements. If you have, gotten loans for capital or investments, you really need to be aware of whether or not those documents require you to get the approval of the lender before actions. That is very common in financing agreements, but that is something you should be aware of. Those can prohibit you from having DBE certification. And if you're already a DBE and you enter into one of these agreements where there are restrictions placed on your control, that could be grounds to remove your DBE. And I hear complaints from clients about this all the time. And I understand, financing, if you're making an investment in and someone else in a company, you want to have some assurances, and that's sort of what's required by financing. But from the DBE standpoint, that can, control obligations where you have to get, for instance, if you have to get your lender's approval for transactions, expenditures over a certain amount, say $25,000, that is a limitation on your control as an owner, and that can potentially disqualify you from DBE certification. So if your business is a partnership, there are at least one CEDO must serve as the general partner with control over all partnership decisions. That you have to have the authority to manage the partnership and bind it in contracts, and not be a limited partner in a partnership who only contributes capital or has a passive role. Again, you got to be top dog. And As is with the past, of course, always, the CETO must have an overall understanding of the business and its essential operations to make sound managerial decisions. That must mean you need to know like the ins and outs of the business, your products, your services, your markets, your customers, your competitors, finances, the regulations affecting you, the risks, etc. And you have to be able to use that knowledge to make informed and independent decisions. You have to be able to have enough knowledge about your industry and what the work you do to critically analyze information brought to you by non-CETOs in the business, and then use your prior knowledge to analyze that information and come to an independent decision, not just relying on the advice and recommendation of the non-CETOs in your business. You can, as a CETO, delegate administrative activities or operational oversight, but you or another CETO in your business must retain unilateral power to fire that delegate, and the chain of command really needs to be obvious to all participants in the company. That means you can assign some tasks because, of course, you can't do everything, but you still must have the ultimate control and supervision over them and be able to remove them if necessary. And basically, everyone in the company needs to know you're in charge and who reports to who. That, Joe reports to Mary, no question about it. So, another thing to be aware of that no non-CETO participant may have power equal to or greater than that of the CETO, considering all the circumstances. That means that non-CETOs may not have more influence, authority, or leverage than you in the business, whether that's formally or informally, directly or indirectly. For example, non-CETO participants can't make non-routine purchases or disbursements, enter into substantial contracts, or make decisions affecting the company viability without your consent. If they're just deciding, okay, I'm going to order such and such brand pens, that's okay. But if it's I'm going to order a $2 million piece of equipment on my own without the CETO's authorization or weigh-in, that's not good. That's not gonna fly for DBE certification. For companies that operate under a franchise or licensing agreement, you can still be certified as a DBE if you meet the standards and that the franchisor or licensor is an affiliate with your business. That means you still must control your business and not be subject to undue restrictions or interference from the franchisor or licensor. What's undue restriction? Yeah, it's a little bit of a gray area. We do have maybe a little bit of guidance, but it's one of those things that isn't 100% clear and maybe up to the interpretation of the certifying agencies. So you can't depend on another firm for essential equipment, facilities, personnel, or expertise to perform your contracts unless you have a legitimate and limited reason to do so. And you can't just be a pass-through entity. So, franchise and licensing is a weird issue for DBEs. A lot of times that actually comes up in the ACDBEs, the airport concessionaires. So someone that is operating a franchise of such and such, quick service food company to operate a kiosk or a stand at an airport may run into this situation. So what you can always rely upon, though, is coming down to the basics that if you are the socially and economically disadvantaged owner, you need to be the boss, qualified, unquestioned. The buck stops with you, and everybody recognizes that authority. So it can be a little bit of a complex analysis, but as I say to some of my clients, even though I know that you are the owner and you are really running the show, sometimes as business owners, they are more about the team, which is great as a business owner. But in the DBE context, when you're submitting your application, when you are talking about the business and how you're presenting about that stuff, there is no I in team, but there is a me. And there's an M and an E for me. So you need to talk about yourself, talk up yourself. And that is contrary to a lot of my clients' natures. And so I do try to help them by boosting them with that, because I think sometimes I see companies, actually not more than sometimes, pretty often I see companies get denied because of this, because they did not properly present themselves and their business to the DBE certifiers. They talked about, well, Joe does this and Mike does this. And, while some theories of running a business are to give credit to your employees. This is not the time for that. So, in talking about everyone else, they lost the focus on themselves. So that is one thing that I work with my clients on, and that is talking about you as the owner and your business and your knowledge and how you control and run the business. And that is of utmost importance for DBE certification. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.